pass the polygraph test.
Okay.
Okay.
I did not lie on this polygraph. I am.
It's not even an option right now because you did not pass the polygraph, so I know you were being deceptive. So that's not even an issue right now. The issue right now is what happened to Shanann, Bella, and Celeste.
Like, I want them back home, like.
But you know they're not coming back home.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. This is episode 7 in the What Else Do We Know series on Christopher Watts. In this episode we'll be dealing with points 91 to 114. Quite a few of them to get through, but it's been about 2 weeks I think since we've dealt with this. So this will take us to the end of August 2018, and from then on we deal with the chronology in the timeline of September. Before we get to that, I'll also be looking at some further analysis of the Criminal Confessions episode in which Tammy Lee appeared. And what some of you can also look forward to, those interested in the John Benet Ramsey case, I'll be doing an audio excerpt of Christmas Star on this channel as well. If you're interested in some of that content, then please subscribe to this channel. Ring the bell if you want to receive notifications. Like, share. Leave a comment if you've got something to contribute, and let's get started. So point number 91 in the chronology deals with Brandi Smith, a high school friend of Chris Watts who told the Daily Beast everyone liked him. It's actually amazing how many people that knew him have completely turned on him and think he's this monster when he hasn't even been convicted. Chris found himself as a father. Those girls brought him to life and out of his shell. He's not a crazy person. He's not a violent, abusive, or mean person. I'll be broken if he's convicted and it was a lie, but there's a chance, and it's not fair that he's been crucified. What is so amazing about this particular comment, and I think it's the reason why the Chris Watts case is both fascinating and terrifying, is this impression one has of Chris Watts as kind of a nice guy. Brandi Smith's impression of Chris Watts is that he found himself as a father, that he sort of found his mojo, so to speak, when he became a father. And what's interesting when you look at pictures of Chris Watts as a younger guy, as a younger dude, it's almost as if in his 30s he sort of comes into his own as a somewhat slick, somewhat together appearing person. Whereas before that, he just seems like a kind of an ordinary Joe. He sort of just seems like a kind of ordinary mechanic. And it's while he was, part of the whole thriving thing that he seemed to get a new lease on life in a way. He seemed to see himself in kind of a different way. But what is so interesting about this is it's a high school friend. It's not a thriver. It's not someone from Frederick. It's not a colleague. It's someone going all the way back to high school saying everybody liked him. And that he isn't crazy, he's not violent, he's not abusive, he's not mean. That's how she knew him. And one has the same impression from Shanann, from his in-laws, from people who knew him, that Watts wasn't a kind of a temperamental, moody, or mean person. Even when it sort of looked like his marriage wasn't working, you didn't really get a lot of ugly messages between the two of them. And it's very easy to do. When people, even people who like each other, have something on their, have a chip on their shoulder, or have something that they want to communicate that's not pleasant, it's easy to be kind of abusive and mean. And Chris Watts just wasn't like that. He was sort of kind of nice about it, even when he was kind of arguing. And so this particular person, Brandi Smith, is basically just saying that this guy isn't a monster, and it turned out that he was. She's saying, I'll be broken if he's convicted and it was a lie. And it's true. He was convicted and it was all a lie. And the question is, how does someone like Chris Watts fool everybody? How is this possible? And we're going to deal with this in this episode in some of the further points. So someone else, also from the sort of school circuit, Joe Duty, he also provided information as early as August, just calling Chris Watts one of the smartest students I ever had. He described him as a guy with a photographic memory. He said he knew chapter and verse everything you could ask about NASCAR, anything. And I remember early on, I mean, this was August 2018, kind of struggling a little bit about that comment, because, it's quite a statement to call Chris Watts the smartest student that he'd ever had, or one of the smartest students. And we know that Chris Watts' own version of his IQ test was that it was pretty high, right? The impression I get, and this is, I guess, the true crime rocket science version of this particular point, is that I think the important thing to remember is that I think Chris Watts thought of himself as quite smart. I think Chris Watts secretly thought that he was pretty clever. And, a guy going into a polygraph test thinking that he's going to beat the system thinks that he's smarter than everyone in the room. And the reality is that he was actually dumber than everyone in the room. And so Chris Watts being smart in kind of an automotive class is a little bit different to being smart in terms of a homicide investigation. It's totally different. So I'm not saying that Chris Watts wasn't smart, and I'm not saying that he wasn't, quite a gifted or clever kid in terms of mechanics. I think he was. I think he did have an aptitude for numbers. But the problem is he was smart in certain areas and not very smart in other areas. He was very good with details, I think, but I think he was also not good with all details. He may have been good with numbers and certain details, but him leaving the fitted sheet out there wasn't very clever. Him not knowing what to do with Shanann's phone wasn't very clever. Him committing the crime in the first place wasn't very clever. And that's why I put down point number 94, smart, where I said, how smart is smart in the context of an auto mechanic. And point number 95, this is something that Shanann said in a Strive article. She said, it's amazing that my husband and I have created more memories in the last 2 years than we did in the previous 8. And it's interesting if that's true. It's interesting that if that is true, that it's not just marketing, that they really did make more memories in the last 2 years of their life. Then one wonders about that. Was the memories related to looking good, the whole thriving thing? Was it traveling to all these sort of foreign destinations? One must also then ask, pre-Thrive, what is really going on that they weren't making memories? And then point number 96, Shanann boasted of Chris's fitness progress, that he went from a pant size 38 to 32 in 2018. So something was definitely happening. There was a sudden shift in Chris Watts' identity of himself, and I think Shanann's as well. I think they were both becoming more confident people in terms of themselves and in terms of each other. And I think that confidence kind of asserted itself as assertiveness. Point number 97, in a June Facebook post, Shanann discussed grocery shopping for Chris. who would be a bachelor for 5 weeks while the family was gone. He joined them for the last week of the vacation. And at the time, we didn't quite know what the significance of that was. We didn't know whether something in that vacation had something to do with something that was going on. But it seemed like it was, didn't it? I'm not going to go through point number 88. I've sort of gone through it before. Or even 99. It's to do with Trent Bolt, something that he said to the Daily Beast. But it's what I think the reason that I just referenced it is it talks about this different side of a loving Chris Watts. Then we go to point number 100. Why did Watts' family move to Colorado in the first place? According to a law, he said the Wattses moved to Colorado after Chris accepted a job as a mechanic at the dealership in 2012. So they moved to Colorado on the strength of him kind of basically being a mechanic. If you think of it in that context and then buying that expensive house, it's basically a mechanic buying that basically 3-story house. It's quite an incredible thing, wouldn't you say? It's quite it's certainly somebody is not lacking for, in terms of, do you want to live in a humble home or do you want to live in a very extravagant home? Shanann was also hired by the same company's internet sales department. I think that was Longmont Ford. And according to online reviews, was a talented salesperson. It's quite important to remember that Shanann was someone talented just at selling things. And she took those talents into the whole Thrive thing as well. Number 101. And this is a customer review from April 2013. Shanann went out of her way to find the vehicle I wanted, as well as tirelessly went back and forth to get me the payments that I needed to get me into a new car. She was never pushy, and while I know she really wanted to sell a car, she never tried to sell me something that I didn't want. So if we think of that comment in the context of Thrive, it's certainly interesting. One thing I think we can all agree with in terms of Shanann was she had a very strong work ethic. But Chris Watts seemed to as well. Then we go to point 102. Linda Biggers, a realtor who listed Shanann's home, told the Daily Beast that she believes the couple moved because Chris Watts got a job out west. And then Biggers said, I think she wanted to get married and move to Colorado with him. This is in terms of Shanann. The house was hers, it wasn't his. She just had a really beautiful home. It was beautifully furnished. So it's interesting that they had a beautiful home in North Carolina, and then they went all the way to Colorado to get a completely different job. Isn't that kind of just that move itself? Isn't that quite interesting that you didn't get a job as a mechanic just nearby? Went all the way to completely different state, far away from both their families. Then point 103, Shanann King hurried to sell her residence and left furniture behind as part of the sale. The buyer told Associated Press. A deed for the house was signed in August 2012 while Shanann was living in Colorado. Property records show. And then Bella Marie was born in December 2013. A month before the birth of Celeste, in July 2015, the couple filed for bankruptcy. If you just think about that they were in kind of a financial malaise just prior to the birth of Cece. And now, in other words, the Wattses were kind of going through financial distress while Shanann was pregnant. This was in July 2015, and now Watts has kind of got a strange deja vu about that. Shanann's pregnant again, and they are in financial dire straits again. And it's kind of like, do you want to go through that again? Like, you want to go through that same journey that they went through previously again? And obviously, around about that time, that's when the Ruseks moved in with the Watts. Chris Watts had to be thinking about that as well. And it's an episode I've got on this channel as well, which is Shanann had a plan possibly how to deal with their financial circumstances. But would it have suited Chris Watts? 106, in April 2017, Shanann announced she was leaving her job at the Children's Hospital to become a full-time stay-at-home mom working at the Lavelle Supplement Company. I think she only went full-time in terms of that particular job. I think it only happened in, I don't want to lie, but I think it was January 2017 she actually did work full-time. I think that's when she actually posted it, so I'm not sure if that's 100% accurate. 107, on her 1-year anniversary with the brand, she told Facebook friends she was broke when she started at Lavelle. "108, sometimes when you have children and your relationship starts to deteriorate, a child could help repair it." And that's what Chris Watts said in a YouTube video on relationship deterioration and despair and repair. 109, March 15, 2018. "Had about 2 hours of sleep last night. I couldn't sleep. I had a lot on my mind with girls' surgery today. Took my 3 simple steps and I feel good. Love my thrive. I can be awake and focused for my girls." 110, May 7th, post by Shanann of her husband. "Someone's thriving, up for work at 4 a.m. Just got home and now mowing the grass. Like a boss, he loves me." When she says here that he was up for work at 4 a.m., I wonder whether it doesn't mean that he was up sort of exercising in the basement. He was up for work, yes he was, but 4 a.m. is really early, and I think what that actually refers to, he was up exercising and then he was going to go to work. That also just shows you the work ethic. Point 111, June 15th, Chris just said he's been more talkative since he started Burn, talking to random strangers. Hashtag he's an introvert. He's an introvert. So that's quite interesting. As recently as June 15th, this was basically 2 months prior to the murders. Chris becomes more talkative, and he ascribes it to Thrive. And I think it's true. I think Chris had become more talkative. He was talking certainly to, a colleague at his work more than he otherwise would have been or was. So that certainly was true. But it's interesting that Shanann is in no doubt that Chris Watts is an introvert. And she's kind of singing the praises of Thrive as something that can even make your partner less introverted. 112. "I'm really feeling the need to gift this to my hubby for Father's Day," one of Shanann's friends commented. In response, Shanann joked, "Gift it, then leave for the day." Not quite sure what that gift was. I'm not going to go through 113. 114 just refers to Shanann moving out at 18 years of age and never looking back. And what that really kind of just reinforces that Shanann was an independent kind of personality. She moved out of home early on, and she didn't want to move back in. She would have her parents move in with her. Would she have wanted to move in with her parents? And that's the end of the August section of Christopher Watts. What else do we know? The September section just deals with how things ramped up after that. And just how the Chris Watts case has become an obsession on Facebook. This was in early September 2018. I would say it's still the case. It's also become an obsession on YouTube, hasn't it? Okay, and so that's about it for today's episode. Look out for the audio excerpt of Christmas Star on this channel, probably the next episode, and then also some additional coverage of the criminal confessions. I just haven't quite completed the analysis I was doing there. And then something else quite exciting coming on this channel is TCRS Debunks, and it's just a series that we're going to be doing, debunking the very popular disappearance of Madeleine McCann documentary on Netflix. So if you want to catch any of these episodes, any of this coverage, subscribe to this channel, and then on Patreon look out for the another TCRS series debunking the John Bonet Final Suspect series. It's kind of a podcast of, I think, 16 episodes, and there's already a analysis on Patreon, so you can go and check that out. And then there's also some additional content, such as dealing with some of the aspects of the criminal mind and criminal psychology, such as the lie of character. So you can head on to Patreon for that. That's Patreon/TCRS. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next.